بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليه وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء. ما خاب من تمسك بكم وأمن من لجأ إليكم. يا ليتنا فيا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي، فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. أما النبي فقد قضى وبقلبه من قومه قبسات وجد مكمن، والبضعة الزهراء ماتت بعدما ألقت بضرب سياطهم للمحسن، والمرتضى أردوه في محرابه بيمين أشقى العالمين وألعني، وبالسم النقيع عداوة من كف جعدة قد قضى الحسن السني. وإليك عني لا تقول حدث بما لاقى الحسين، فرزؤه قد شفني حيث المصائب جمة، لم أدر ما منها عليك أقص إذ كلفتني. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. حتى إذا جاء أحدهم الموت قال رب ارجعوني لعلي أعمل صالحا فيما تركت. كلا إنها كلمة هو قائلها ومن ورائهم برزخ إلى يوم يبعثون. أطروا أفواهكم وزينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. Death is an ultimate journey that each and every one of us has to experience. Every living thing on this earth, whether it's a multicellular organism or if it's even a one-celled organism, everything in this world and everything in this universe will inevitably perish. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Holy Quran, where He says, كُلُّ شَيْءٍ هَالِكٌ إِلَّا وَجْهَ. Everything in this universe, living and non-living, will perish except for the everlasting face of Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you and I that كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every soul will surely taste the bitterness of death. It's unavoidable. In order for us to reach the true life, the real life of the hereafter, we have to go through death. We have to experience it. It's the only exit and the only outlet from this temporal world and temporal existence. It's the only exit strategy to the hereafter. And therefore, brothers and sisters, we are essentially trapped in this life. We are trapped. And the only way to get to the other side, to the real life, to the everlasting life, is to go through death. Allah tells us that what lies after death is true life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ لَهِيَ الْحَيْوَانِ. Surely the life of the hereafter, it is the true life. What we are living now, it's a temporary existence. It's a bridge connecting us to the everlasting world. Now, Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi alayhi, he has a beautiful narration where he says, he speaks about this life. He says, فَفِيهَا اخْتُبِرْتُمْ. You were created to be tried in it. You were created to be put under a divine test. وَلِغَيْرِهَا خُلِقْتُمْ. But you were created for another world. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, in a very beautiful narration, he says, every day that you and I walk on this earth, the earth addresses us. It speaks to us. It says to us, يَا ابْنَ آدَمْ أَنْتَ الْيَوْمْ تَسِيرُ عَلَى ظَهْرِي. O son of Adam, today you are walking on my back. You are walking on top of me, on my surface. You are walking on my surface. وَغَدًا أَنْتَ فِي بَطْنِي. But tomorrow you will be inside of me. You will die and you will be buried. And the Holy Prophet says, فَعْمَلْ لِبَيْتِكَ الَّذِي سَتَسْكُنُ فِي. So work and struggle towards the house and the abode which is your final destination. Struggle for that life. Put it in your perspective. Think about it. Reflect and prepare for that day when you leave this world. Now, to many of us, brothers and sisters, death is very terrifying. It's even frightening to speak about, because we're speaking about something that is unknown. It's not like any of us have experienced it and have come back to share our experience. Therefore, it's an unknown world. And it's very terrifying because each and every one of us, even an atheist, deep down inside of them, even though they may reject it with their tongue, there is a level of awareness that after death there may be something, that I may see things, that I may experience things. And this is why, brothers and sisters, when we examine death, people define death in various ways. There are some who define death as the termination of existence. Your existence is terminated, you're finished. And this is the ideology of an atheist. An atheist believes that, when you die, that's it. Your body disintegrates and now you don't exist anymore. There's nothing that you experience. There are some who believe that death is a cycle. It's a reincarnation. That when I die, I'm going to come back as something else. And I'm going to die again and then come back. It's an endless cycle of reincarnation. However, Muslim philosophers, they say that death is a transferal. It's a movement from one form of existence to another form of existence. It's not the end. It's merely a movement and a transfer from one world to another. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah, He highlights the 5 main stages that you and I go through. From the moment we exist, we're brought into existence, until we reach paradise. There are 5 stages that we go through. These are the 5 stages of our existence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah, He says, كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا ثُمَّ أَحْيَاكُمْ ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ ثُمَّ يُحْيِيكُمْ ثُمَّ إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. 5 stages. The first stage is the stage of non-existence, before you had your physical bodies. The second stage is this life. Therefore, out of the 5 stages, we are only at the second stage of this journey. The third stage is death. The fourth stage is when we're brought back to life, the resurrection. And the final stage is either paradise or hellfire, when we return to Allah and we meet our final destination. Now, when we take the first stage, the stage of non-existence, where Allah says, "Kuntum amwatan." Here, this non-existence is not a total and absolute non-existence, because at this first stage, we existed as spirits. We existed as spirits. And we were basically an engine without a body. We were spirits that didn't have bodies. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we were spirits before Allah put the spirit and the soul inside of the body, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a dialogue with us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَىٰ. Allah addressed all of us before we had our physical bodies. He addressed our souls and He asked us, "Am I not your Lord? Do you not bear witness that I am your Lord?" And all of us, we acknowledged Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We acknowledged Him. Therefore, the first stage is the stage where we were spirits before we were put and before our bodies were fashioned. So we were essentially engines without bodies. Now, when we came into existence, which is the second stage, when we were given our physical bodies and we came to this world, again, this life that was given to us is not an absolute life. It's not in the absolute sense. Because, brothers and sisters, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he says, "An-nasu niyam." People are asleep. The people in this world, they're asleep. إِذَا مَاتُوا انْتَبَهُوا. When you die, this is when you wake up. This is when you become aware. You know, it's ironic that when someone dies, especially in this country, on the tombstone, they write what? Rest in peace. Rasulullah is telling us, we are the ones who are resting. We are the ones who are asleep. The one who is in the grave is awake. And he's aware. We are the ones who are oblivious and unaware. النَّاسُ نِيَامٌ إِذَا مَاتُوا انْتَبَهُوا. Now, then the third stage is death. Then we live for a certain period of time and then we die. But again, this death is not an absolute death. Because even after death and even before, during the process of dying, the dead, they're able to see, they're able to hear, they're able to experience. You may ask me, how can they see? How can they hear if their eyes and their ears are not functioning? It's very simple. When you have a dream, when you dream at night, don't you see things? Don't you hear things? But your eyes are closed and there's no sound. It's your soul experiencing. It's your soul that is hearing and seeing. And this is very similar to what's happening to the dead. The dead, you think that they're not aware, but they're very aware. They see and they hear. So much so that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, in a very shocking hadith, he says, إِنَّ الْمَيِّتْ لَيَسْمَعُ خَفْقَ النَّعَالِ عَلَىٰ قَبْرِهِ. The dead, they can even hear the tapping of the sandals over their grave. They can hear. They're aware. Don't think that they're disconnected and they don't hear anything and they don't see. They're very aware. And you find, brothers and sisters, that after the battle of Badr, the first battle of Islam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he was walking among the kuffar, the Meccans, the Quraysh who fought against him and who ridiculed him, who said there's no akhirah, there's no afterlife. Rasulullah was walking among them and he was addressing them. They were dead bodies laying on the sands of Badr. He was telling them, have you found the promise of Allah to be true? I was telling you about the hereafter. Now do you see it? Now do you believe me? Now do you see what I have been telling you? The companions, they were puzzled. They asked the Holy Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, أتكلم أجسادا ميتة? Are you speaking to dead bodies? What are you doing? Rasulullah, he looks at them and he says, Wallah ma antum bi asma'i minhum. I swear by Allah that you cannot hear me better than they can. وَلَوْ أُذِنَ لَهُمْ بِالْكَلَامِ لَأَجَابُوا. If Allah gave them permission, they would reply. But they are cut off from the people of this world. They can hear, but they don't have the permission to speak because they've been speaking all their lives. This privilege of kalam has been taken away from them. Now, you know, brothers and sisters, as I said, most people are afraid of death because we know that it's not the end. Death is not the end. We know that there is something after it, and we know that we're going to be aware. And this is why Imam Zayn al-Abidin, salawatullahi alayhi, la basallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In Dua Abu Hamza al-Thimali, which is a very beautiful dua. It's a life-changing dua that's recommended to be recited in the month of Ramadan. The Imam brings to our attention the reality of the hereafter. And the Imam alayhi salam, who is a ma'soom, who's infallible, he weeps to Allah saying, Abki li khuruji nafsi. I cry for, not because I lose wealth, not because I lose anything in the dunya. I cry for the releasing of my soul, because that day is going to come. أبكي لخروج نفسي أبكي لظلمة قبري. I cry because of the darkness of my grave. That hole in the earth, I cry because that is my final stop in this world. أبكي لضيق لحدي. I cry because of the narrowness of my coffin. I cry وأبكي لسؤال منكر ونكير إياي. I cry for the interrogation of Munkar and Nakir. I will be questioned. I will be brought to account. أبكي لخروج من قبري عريانا ذليلا حاملا ثقلي على ظهري. I cry for the day that I am resurrected naked from my grave, carrying the burden of my sins. This is Imam Zayn al-Abidin who cries, and he is in the highest of levels of paradise. The Imam is teaching you and I how to speak to Allah, because the Imam knows that we've lived lives of sin, that we've defied Allah. So he's bringing himself down to our level, and he's teaching you and I how to address Allah. So this is not a fictional story, brothers and sisters. I'm not here to terrify you. This is something that we have to think about and ponder. Amir al-Mu'mineen, alayhi salam, he says, لو أنكم عاينتم ما قد عاين من مات منكم. If you were able for one moment to see what the dead have seen, what does the Imam say? لجزعتم ووهلتم وسمعتم وأطعتم. If you were for one moment, if you were to see what the dead have seen and heard, you would be terrified. You would be shocked. And you would have listened to Allah and you would have obeyed Allah. وَلَكِنْ مَحْجُوبٌ عَنْكُمْ مَا قَدْ عَيْنُوا. But there is a barrier. You don't see the reality. There is a barrier between you and them. You don't see. And the Imam alayhi salam, he says, وَقَرِيبًا مَا يَسْقُطُ الْحِجَابِ. But very soon, that cover, that barrier will be lifted, and you will see the truth, and you will see the reality. Now, the question is, what is death? What do I experience when that moment comes, and the angel of death comes and takes my soul? What happens? What do I feel? The Holy Quran tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَاءَتْ سَكْرَةُ الْمَوْتِ بِالْحَقِّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when a person is dying, they experience sakratul maut. They experience what is called the intoxication of death. The intoxication of death. Because what? You're discombobulated. You're in a state of shock. You're not able to think straightly. Your senses have been suspended. You're not able to speak. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi says, إِنَّ الْمَيِّتِ لَيَنْعَقِدُ لِسَانَهُ عِنْدَ الْمَوْتِ. The person who is dying, he loses his ability to speak. He can't speak. You know, when you see someone who's intoxicated, they're not able to speak. They're not functioning properly. Allah is saying death has a similar effect. Your senses break down. Your senses break down. And therefore it's a very difficult moment. It's a very difficult moment. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he says, إِنَّ أَشَدَّ السَّاعَاتِ عَلَى ابْنِ آدَمْ ثَلَاث. There are 3 periods in the existence of the human being that are very difficult and are full of hardship and very painful. The first is the day the human being is born, because you go from the comfort of that womb to this mysterious world that you have no experience in. The second most terrifying moment is what? الساعة التي يشاهد فيها ملك الموت. The moment where you see the angel of death. This is the second most terrifying moment. And what is the third? The moment you are raised from your grave and you stand before Allah for the final reckoning. This is why Isa ibn Maryam, he asks Allah for His mercy. When? يَوْمَ وَلِدْتُ وَيَوْمَ أَمُوتُ وَيَوْمَ أُبْعَثُ حَيًّا. Oh Allah, I ask for your protection and your grace on the day that I was born, on the day that I die, and on the day that I shall be raised again on the day of judgment. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And brothers and sisters, the place and the timing of death is very precise. You know, we cannot escape death. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Holy Quran. He says, أَيْنَمَا تَكُونُوا يُدْرِكْكُمُ الْمَوْتِ وَلَوْ كُنْتُمْ فِي بُرُوجٍ مُشَيَّدَةٍ. You cannot escape death. Allah says, even if you are in the most protected fortress, you cannot escape death. You may think that no one has access. Even if you're in a bunker in the Pentagon, where you have to be special to get in. You have to have clearance to pass. But the angel of death doesn't need clearance. You cannot escape it. And the timing of death is very precise. One man approaches Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and he tells him, Abna Rasulullah, why is it that I see some dead people, they have their eyes open, and others, they have their eyes closed? Many of you have seen some of the dead, they have their eyes open, and some of them, they have their eyes closed. The Imam says those who had their eyes open, Allah didn't give them enough time to close their eyes. And those who had their eyes closed, Allah didn't even give them a single moment to open their eyes. Your time in this world is very precise, very exact. You don't get a fraction of a second more or a fraction of a second less. Now, when a person dies and they wash the body, and I encourage anyone who hasn't done this, if you really want a wake-up call, if you really feel like you're straying away, go and participate in the washing of a dead body. It's mustahab to do this. It's mustahab because it's good for the person who has died, and it's also good for you. It's a reminder that you're not going to live forever. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi says, إِذَا وُضِعَ الْمَيِّتُ بَيْنَ يَدَيِ الْغَاسِلِ. When the dead person is put in front of the one who is going to do the washing, the ghusl, كَلَّمَ الْغَاسِلِ بِكَلَامٍ لَوْ سَمِعَهُ مَا غَسَّلَ مَيِّتًا بَعْدَهُ أَبَدًا. Rasulullah says, when the dead person is placed in front of you and you wash, the dead, as I said, addresses the washer with a few words that if the person who is washing the dead body were able to hear, he would never wash another body ever again. What does the dead person say to the one who's doing the ghusl al-mayyit. Rasulullah says, the soul of the deceased is addressing the one who is doing the washing, saying what? رفقا بي أيها الغاسل. Oh, you who are washing my body, please be very gentle with me. Have mercy on me, be kind to me. فوالله ما خرجت الروح من عضو من أعضاء بدني إلا وانفصل ذلك العضو مني. Please be gentle with me, because when the soul was being released from my body, every time it passed a body part, I felt like that part was being amputated. It was excruciating pain. Now, you may ask me, is this going to happen to all of us? Is it going to be excruciating pain for all of us? You know, brothers and sisters, let us take a moment and go to the Prophet, Rasulullah, when he was dying. What was happening to Rasulullah when he was in his last moments? Narrations say that Rasulullah was on his deathbed. And he became very ill. His condition was worsening. So much so that he wasn't taking any more visitors. The only ones who were with him were the Ahlul Bayt. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. Fatima Zahra, salawatullahi alayha, she goes to the door and she says, my father Rasulullah is ill. He's not accepting any visitors. The knocking continues. Rasulullah, he looks at his daughter Fatima and he says, Bunayya Fatima, this is not a visitor. This is not one of my companions. هذا ملك الموت. This is the angel of death that has come. وإنه لم يستأذن على أحد من قبلي ولن يستأذن على أحد بعدي. The angel of death, he has never sought permission to enter and to take the soul of anyone, and nor will he ever ask permission for anyone after me. He has done this out of respect for you, O Lady Fatima, and out of respect for me. Imagine, the angel of death asks for permission before entering the house of Fatima, and go read about those who entered without permission. Amazing. Now, the angel of death sits beside Rasulullah. And Rasulullah, the angel of death asks the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, do you give me permission to take your soul? Rasulullah says, yes, I give you permission, but can you wait for a few moments? I want Jibreel to be with me in this moment. He has been with me for 23 years. This is the most difficult moment in my life. I want him to be with me. Jibreel then appears. Rasulullah looks at Jibreel, says, Jibreel, you've been with me for 23 years. How could you leave me when I am in my last moments? Jibreel says, forgive me, Ya Rasulullah. I was in paradise decorating Jannah for your arrival. I was preparing your arrival, for your arrival. So the angel of death says, Ya Rasulullah, if you want to live longer, you can live longer. Allah will grant you a longer life. But if you want to leave, then it is time to leave now. Rasulullah says, إِلَى الرَّفِيقِ الْأَعْلَى إِلَى الرَّفِيقِ الْأَعْلَى. I want to go and meet with my beloved Lord. So the angel of death begins drawing the soul of the Prophet. Rasulullah experienced unbelievable pain, excruciating pain. And Rasulullah looked at the angel of death and said to him, Ya Malik al-Maut, أَهَكَذَا تَقْبِضُ أَرْوَاحَ النَّاسِ? O angel of death, this is very painful. This is so painful. Is this how you take the souls of the people? Is this the pain that they will experience? The angel of death says, Ya Rasulullah, أنت خاتم الأنبياء والرسل. You are the master of the prophets. You are the crowning creation of Allah. I am being very gentle with you. I'm being very easy with you. Rasulullah, you know what he says to the angel of death? He says, إِذَنْ شَدِّدْ عَلَيْ وَخَفِّفْ عَلَىٰ أُمَّتِي. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He says, in that case, be very severe with me. Let me feel the pain, but be gentle with my followers, the followers of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. You know, brothers and sisters, what happens to you in those last moments depends on what you do in this life. Sometimes you may be a believer and you may be headed towards paradise, but if you have some sins that you haven't repented for, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I cleanse you through the pain and the agony of death. I make you suffer during the process of death, so when you meet me on the day of judgment, you are pure and you're clean. So it depends, my brothers and sisters. And if you have repented, as Rasulullah says, "At-ta'ibu min al-dhanb kaman la dhanba lah." The one who has repented for his sins, it's as if he has no sins. And Imam al-Hadi, salawatullahi alayhi, he gives us a description, a physical description of how death is to a believer and what death is like to a kafir and a munafiq. The Imam alayhi salam, he says that the process of death for a believer is the following. He says, it is like نزع ثياب وسخة واستبدالها بثياب فاخرة. Death for a believer, it's like taking off dirty, filthy clothes that are uncomfortable and wearing and exchanging it for clothes that are very comfortable and lavish and extravagant. And then he says it is also like وفك القيود والأغلال. For a believer, when he's dying, it feels like there were shackles and chains on his body, and now those chains and shackles have been lifted and he's comfortable. Now, the other story is for the kafir, for those who have angered Allah, like Saddam Hussein and Muammar al-Qaddafi, inshallah. These people, this is what they're going to face. Imam al-Hadi says what? What they face is لَسَعِ الْعَفَّاعِ. They will feel something similar to a snake bite, أو لدغ العقارب, or a scorpion bite. It's going to be very painful and very agonizing for them. And this is only the appetizer, huh? This is only the appetizer. The big feast is in Jahannam. Now, it seems like I don't want to just give you all bad news today, but there is good news. And the good news is that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi says, "Man kana akhiru kalamihi la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah." Whoever is able to utter these words in his last moments, sincerely, not only with his tongue, with his heart, he will be permitted to enter paradise. Now, I remember a couple of years ago, there was someone who told me that, Saddam Hussein is really in the highest level in paradise. I told him, what do you mean? He says, didn't you see the video? He said, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasul. He did the shahadatain. So according to this hadith, he is in the highest level of paradise. He's going to be in Jannah. I told him, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. I'm glad that you memorized that hadith, but it seems that you've forgotten the words of Allah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَقْتُلُ مُؤْمِنًا مُتَعَمِّدًا فَجَزَاؤُهُ جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدًا فِيهَا. You can't pick and choose. Yes, he did say La ilaha illallah, big deal. But he violated the sanctity of human life. If he were to butcher one man intentionally, one believer, his punishment is hellfire, eternally. He murdered millions of people. Now, the question is, brothers and sisters, how do we prepare for death? Number one, we have to be mindful of it. Death, shaitan, brothers and sisters, he wants you not to remember death. He wants you to forget the most obvious reality, which is death. He wants you to think that everyone is going to die around you, but you're going to live the longest, that you're going to continue living. He wants you to be oblivious and forgetful about death. But if we examine the life of Rasulullah on a daily basis, he not only remembered death, but he used to visit the graveyards. After Salat al-Fajr, he would go to the cemetery, to the Baqi', and he would stand there. And he would pay his respects, and he would address the dead. What would he say to them? He would send his salam to them. He would say, Assalamu alaikum ya ahl al-diyar al-muhisha. Peace be upon you, O the inhabitants of the lonely abode. أنتم لنا فرط وَنَحْنُ بِكُمْ لَاحِقُونَ. You have gone ahead of us and we will join you. أَمَّا الْبُيُوتِ فَقَدْ سُكِنَتْ. If you are asking and worried about your homes, they are now occupied. وَأَمَّا الْأَمْوَالِ فَقَدْ قُسِّمَتْ. And the wealth that you left behind has been divided among the inheritors. وَأَمَّا الْأَزْوَاجِ فَقَدْ زُوِّجَتْ. And the spouses that you left behind have moved on and they've gotten married. هذا خبر ما عندنا فما خبر ما عندكم. This is the news, the daily news that I have from this world. What is the news that you wish to give me about the hereafter, the akhirah? Rasulullah, he would pause for a moment and he would say, أما والله لو أذن لهم بالكلام لقالوا تزودوا فإن خير الزاد التقوى. If they were given the ability to speak, the dead, they would say one thing to you. They would say, prepare, because it is a long journey. And the best provision for this journey is taqwa, the fear of Allah, being conscious of Allah, not violating the laws of Allah. Now, death, brothers and sisters, it's not to be feared. It's to be feared if you have not prepared for it. But if you have lived your life in a way where you have put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before your eyes, and you have obeyed Allah, and if you've committed sins, you've repented, and don't ever delay repentance. Because who knows what is going to happen to you tomorrow. Death comes without warning. You don't get a 30-day notice. That doesn't happen. When the angel of death came to Dawood alayhi salam, a prophet of Allah, the angel of death came to him and says, Dawood, your time is up. I am here to take your soul. Dawood says, how come I didn't receive any news or warning about your coming? I am a prophet of Allah. I didn't receive any warning that you were coming. The angel of death says, oh Dawood, where is your mother? He says, she died. Where is your father? He died. Where is your uncle, your aunt? They died. The angel of death says, Dawood, isn't this enough of a warning? Isn't this enough of a warning? The warning is that people around you are dying. Do you think that you are alone and you will live forever? So therefore, if you prepare for death, death is not to be feared. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he would anxiously look forward to death. He would yearn for it. He would envy the shuhada who laid martyred on the battlefields. He would pray to Allah for shahada. He wanted to experience it. And this is why the Imam says, Wallah inna ibn Abi Talib la'anasu bil-maut min at-tifli fi thadyi ummih. The son of Abu Talib, his love for death is more intense than the love of a child for his mother's milk. The Imam was looking forward to it because death is the only thing that was separating Amir al-Mu'mineen from joining Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi and Fatima az-Zahra. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Therefore, brothers and sisters, death comes to us all. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he says, خط الموت على ولد آدم مخط القلادة على جيد الفتى. Death encircles the son of Adam in the same way a necklace encircles the neck of a girl. It's around you. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. And brothers and sisters, tonight I would like to spend a few moments in the house of Lady Fatima salawatullahi alayha. This noble lady, the daughter of Rasulullah, who prepared for that final moment, who prepared for death. And she did not just expect to have it easy because she was the daughter of the Holy Prophet. She worked because Rasulullah even told her that, oh Fatima, I cannot protect you on the Day of Judgment. It is your own a'mal, your own actions that will protect you on the Day of Judgment. And indeed, she prepared for that day. when she was in her final days and she felt that her time was approaching, she called upon Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam to give him her final wasiyah, to give him her final will. She calls upon the Imam, and Lady Fatima salawatullahi alayha, she says to the Imam, Aba al-Hasan, ما عهدتني كاذب ولا خائنا ولا خالفتك منذ عاشرتني. Ya Abul Hasan, I have been a good wife to you. I have not disobeyed you. I have not been disloyal to you. I have not disobeyed any of your commands. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says, Oh daughter of Rasulullah, you are far above that. You are far above any admonishing from me. But I know that when I lose you, you will be renewing the agony that I felt when I lost my beloved Rasulullah. And when I lose you, I will be losing my equal. I will have no support and no friend and no companion in this dunya. And they begin to cry. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, he places the head of Fatima al-Zahra in his lap. And she looks at him and she says to him, Aba al-Hasan, إذا أنا قضيت نحبي غسلني حنطني كفني صلي علي. Ya Abul Hasan, when I die, I want you to wash my body. I want you to embalm me, and I want you to enshroud me, and I want you to pray over me. ولا تشهد أحد من هؤلاء الذين ظلموني جنازتي ولا الصلاة علي منهم ولا من أتباعهم. And I don't want any of those who oppressed me to attend my funeral procession. I don't want them to pray on me. I don't want them to follow my coffin. I don't want anything to do with them. وادفني في الليل إذا هدأت الأصوات ونامت العيون. Ya Abul Hasan, I want you to bury me at night. I want you to go in the middle of the night and bury me in the middle of the night when the eyes close to rest and the voices become silent, late in the night. وعفي موضع قبري أبا الحسن وتعهد قبري بتلاوة القرآن. I want you to conceal the location of my grave so the future generations who come after me, when they realize that they don't know where my grave is, they will ask, what happened to the daughter of Rasulullah? And through their questioning, they will discover the dhulm and the atrocities that we faced, and they will discover the position of Ahlul Bayt. And she tells the Imam, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I want you, after you bury me, to come to my grave every night and recite Quran. I want you to recite Surah Yasin and Surah Safat every night. Because the soul of the deceased feels tranquility when Quran is recited. And she tells the Imam, Ya Abul Hasan, and be gentle with Hassan and Hussein and Zainab, because they just lost their grandfather and their hearts are broken, and now they will lose their mother. So be very gentle with them. And then after she gives him the orders, she tells Hassan and Hussein to go to the masjid with their father. She tells them, Oh my sons, اخرجا خلف أبيكما علي للمسجد. Go to the masjid with your father. And she looks at her servant Asma and she says, Asma, I still have to pray my nawafil, my extra prayers. I'm gonna go in my mihrab to pray them, and I'm feeling very weak now. Therefore, if you hear me stop reciting, if you don't hear any qira'ah from my mihrab, call upon me. If I answer you, that means I am okay. But if I don't answer, you know that I've joined my father, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. So she goes in her mihrab and she begins reciting her prayers until suddenly there is no more voice coming from the mihrab of Fatima. Asma, she panics and she calls out, Ya al-Hasan wal-Hussein. There is no answer. Ya Zahra, there is no answer. Ya bint Rasulillah, there is no answer. Asma says, I went into the mihrab and I saw Fatima Zahra in sujood, but her soul has left her body. And then at that moment, I heard the voices of Hassan and Hussein. They ran inside of the house. And the first thing that they asked, brothers and sisters, they ran in. They were very young, 6, 7 years old. They ran in and they said, Ya Asma, ayna ummuna Fatima? Where is our mother Fatima? Asma says, oh grandsons of Rasulullah, come sit down. You haven't eaten anything today. Let me prepare some food for you. Sit down, Ya qurrata aynay Rasulullah. Come sit down. She goes and she brings food in front of the Imams. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he looks at Imam al-Hassan. And they look at Asma, they say to her, Asma, min ayna alimti annana na'kul wa laysat ma'ana ummuna Fatima? Oh Asma, when have you ever seen us eat without our mother Fatima? We always eat with our mother Fatima. فأحس قلب الحسين بالشر. Imam Hussein felt that something was wrong. He rushes to the mihrab of his mother and he finds her in sujood and he finds her dead in prostration. He begins crying, he begins weeping, and then they rush back to give the news to Amir al-Mu'mineen, who is still at the masjid. They run to their father and they say to him, Ya Abatah, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, عظم الله لك الأجر. Oh our father, we send our condolences to you for the loss of our mother Fatima. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he hears that, he collapses and he faints. Asadullah al-Ghalib, he was never brought to his knees except when he heard about the death of Fatima Zahra. And then the Imam, when he returns, he washes the body of Lady Fatima. And as he's washing the body of Lady Fatima, Hassan and Hussein, they cling to their mother. They tell her, Kallimini ana azizuk al-Hussein. Oh my mother, please say something to me, speak to me, I am your beloved Hussein. And then Jibreel descends upon Amir al-Mu'mineen and he says to him, Ya Ali, irfa'huma, faqad abkaya wallah malaikatu sama. Oh Ali, remove them from their mother because they have caused the angels of the heavens to weep. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un wa sayalamu alladhina zalamu ala Muhammad أي منقلب سينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us and to bless us and to grant us the ziyarah one day inshallah of the grave of Lady Fatima when it is finally revealed, and we ask Allah to grant us the shafa'ah, the intercession of Lady Fatima on the day of judgment. يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.